Morning, everyone. Thanks of you who have joined. As a quick reminder, we haven't done a virtual meeting in a while. If you could just please throw your name and organization you're with in the chat, that would help us keep attendance a little bit easier. Just waiting on our chair. Well, we're at 7:31 here. I don't see our chair Mills. Expect him to be here any second. Here he comes. I was just going to say quickly while he's joining, thanks for hanging with us as we move this meeting to virtual on behalf of everyone's safety on the roads out there and the cold temperatures this morning. Thanks for being flexible and being willing to make that change pretty quick late yesterday afternoon as we didn't know how things might progress. So just wanted to say thank you for that. And then there's our fearless leader, Chair Brighton Mayor Greg Mills.
Good morning, everyone. We ready to get going?
We are ready.
Okay.
A lot of people joining here.
Okay. If you can bring up the agenda, Carson, we'll go ahead and call to order our meeting at 7:31 a.m. Let's go ahead. Do you have a flag up? We'll just do the Pledge of Allegiance here virtually.
I don't have a flag, Chair. I could pull one up quickly, but I pulled it in honor of virtual, but I'm happy to pull one up if that's what you'd like to do.
Looks like there's one in your background too.
Yeah, well, there you go.
All right, so we'll just go ahead and start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And go ahead and ask for a move for approval of the minutes.
This is Nancy McNally. I approve. So moved.
McNally is the first. Do we have a second?
Second, Eileen. Oh, Emily got it. It's okay.
Oh, Emily got it. We got a second. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Is there, those that want to approve, say aye.
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 Any nay?
Aye.
All right. Looks like we're approved. Next is the Colorado 7 full corridor update. Carson, you kick that off?
That's right. Thanks, Chair. We're going to jump right in here this morning. The CO7 team wanted to go a little bit earlier in the agenda, so thanks for being flexible there with us and pushing them up toward the top. So I'm actually going to kick this over to my teammate, Tammy, and she'll help introduce the team and the presentation here today, and then I'll flip through the slides.
Morning, everyone. My clicker wasn't working. Glad everybody could make it. I think the group has a really great presentation for you today. I'm going to pass this off to Sarah Grant with Broomfield and Kent Mormon with City of Thornton to do a brief introduction of the CO7 corridor and a short overview and everything we've gone through and where we're at today. And then we will go right in from that into the presentation. And I hope you have lots of questions for them after we're done. Ask your questions because we have the cream of the crop stuff here from CDOT to answer it for you. Okay, Sarah, you can't go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Kent Mormon, and I'm with the City of Thornton staff. Been serving on the Colorado 7 Coalition as a staff, technical staff member since it started. Carson, if you could go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. The Colorado 7 Coalition spans from Brighton to Boulder, and it started several years back when Boulder was looking at a potential BRT study. And as Broomfield and Thornton and Brighton and everybody came together and talked about it, they were looking for a little support, and we said, let's expand it. So we did, and we were successful in getting that. We also realized that Colorado 7 is a very critical corridor east-west in North Metro area. And so the mayors came together, they formed the coalition, and we've moved forward from there. As you can see, it's about a 27-mile long corridor going from US 85 to downtown Boulder. And it has all 8 jurisdictions along Highway 7. And actually, it's Weld County participates some also. We've asked them to come in also. And then we've got several outside groups that are involved also on there. Next slide. Part of the reason for the coalition, and these are latest ones, is that we know that just building highways isn't the only thing and widening the road of Highway 7 will solve the problem. So we've been looking at bus rapid transit. We found our feasibility study that was done actually showed that in the future with bus jump lanes or Q jump lanes for buses, that travel time in the future will actually be less by bus than it would be by taking a car across from Brighton to Boulder. We expect to see 37% increase in traffic, 50 to 60% east of I-25. We also see 49,000 new households based on the current land use along there in master plans, master comprehensive plans, and 38,000 new jobs. And to start, after a few years, we see that the bus rapid transit would have around 9,000 to 10,000 boardings a day. This is not a cheap corridor. We know it has to be chunked out in phases, and those are some of the numbers on the screen. I won't read them to you. If you'll go on to the next one. So that's part of the reason of a multimodal vision, not just vehicles, but bikes, pedestrians, and bus. We advocate for a multimodal corridor, and we advocate for more collaborative to secure funding. And we've been pretty successful in that as we move along. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah. And if you'll move on to the next slide, she'll give you some of that information.
Thanks, Kent. That was a great introduction. Before I move on, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of people in this room, both staff and elected officials, represent on the Colorado 7 Coalition. So if you all could find your reaction button there on the bottom of the screen, and if you are a part of the Colorado 7 Coalition, whether it's you yourself representing on the coalition or someone else from your agency, please raise your hand. Thank you, Mayor Mills. I see you, Commissioner Baca. A lot of CDOT staff here, RTD. So there's a lot of overlap here at NATA from Brighton, Adams County, Thornton, City and County of Broomfield, Erie, and our partners, of course, CDOT and RTD. So really appreciate everybody pulling together for this corridor and recognizing the importance in the region. And another thing that the coalition did that was really important was to help build this vision of the corridor, of this multimodal vision of having transit that is connected by bus rapid transit stations in the future, and really focusing on land use at key parts of the corridor. So not really envisioning that the entire 30 miles would become super dense with lots of stations, really focusing in at key areas within each of our communities where we would see the opportunities to increase density of land use and housing and employment opportunities. This also aligns with the DRCOG Regional Transportation Plan and the urban centers that they've identified. So DRCOG, a few RTPs ago, worked with local agencies to figure out where these densities would occur, and these do align with several key locations along the Colorado 7 corridor. We've done lots of studies since 2014 to 2019. Not all of them are listed here. We've done preliminary planning environmental linkages studies on the eastern end of the corridor, the western end of the corridor, BRT feasibility studies, station area design plans, We've done corridor development plan most recently, so that we can pull all of these plans together and try to move forward with design and planning, which is what the phase that we're in right now. The vision is to connect with a multi-use path for first and final mile connections, or for those that choose to go longer distances along the corridor, and create safer, more accessible facilities that are out there today. Next slide. Another thing that the coalition did was get the Colorado 7 corridor recognized as a key regional corridor in the DRCOG plan. Before, when we were doing the preliminary, the planning environmental linkages studies, Colorado 7 was not recognized as a key regional arterial corridor. And so that was absolutely essential into gaining funding for this corridor once it was recognized by DRCOG as a key regional arterial. We've secured almost $10 million in these last 2 tip cycles for preliminary engineering. And CDOT's going to talk a little bit about the progress on the 2020 to 2023 tip application a little bit later in this program today. We've done a corridor development plan. We're doing corridor wide activities to set us up for the preliminary engineering phase. And some segments were identified to move into 15% design plans. In the DRCOG 22 to 25, we were most recently awarded almost another $10 million to continue advancing the key priority segments along the corridor. This map here, shows that there's a lot going on. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slides. Next slide, please. Additionally, in the most recent 24 to 27 tip call, we were able to secure $10 million, nearly $10 million to support starter operations of transit service on the corridor with the support of the Colorado 7 Coalition and many of you that are sitting around the table here today. So from Brighton to Boulder, the envision is 14-hour day service, 30-minute headways, connecting between Brighton to I-25 at Colorado 7, and at all the available stations that are ready for transportation access along the corridor to Boulder. And that's to establish just starter service to get that going, establish the ridership, especially as we start moving into the construction phase, allowing opportunities for different ways to travel along the corridor. And we're also really excited about the partnership with CDOT. Thank you with the help of Commissioner Stewart to work with the Transportation Commission to move forward with $16 million for this interim mobility hub. As you can see in this photo, this is a concept of the rendering. The project is moving into FIR this month, so we'll be looking at those design plans. And the concept is to provide interim access at Colorado 7 I-25 with slip ramps on the south side of Colorado 7 connected by a pedestrian bridge, with the first improvements that will be planned at the Park and Ride in the Lark Ridge Center in Thornton. And so we'll be putting in the most basic amenities that we need to get that started and phasing in that opportunity for service. Both of these are planned to be open in 2025. And so when we were looking at the DRCOG tip application for operations, we found there was great alignment with the funding opportunity to align with the opening of the station to create that access off of both I-25 for bus staying service, and then any service off of Colorado 7, or having taxis or TNCs, as well as any flex ride services that can help create that connectivity in the vicinity of Colorado 7 I-25. Next slide. And this is the slide that I'm going to be handing off to CDOT to talk about the funding status of all the projects. So this slide actually covers all of the TIP projects, but later in the presentation, we're going to also talk about there's other projects going on in the corridor where we're actually getting some construction done in the near term. So I'll turn it over to Stephen to continue the presentation.
Just before Stephen jumps in, I do apologize. I forgot to mention that as part of the coalition, RTD, CDOT, and the FTA have been participating in the coalition. So apologize to our partners on that. Stephen, go ahead.
So thanks, Kent. Thanks, Sarah. I really like this slide. It took me a while to wrap my head around it, so I'll walk through it a little bit. That line that goes horizontally through the middle, that's Highway 7 for us right there, and that's how it's kind of been chopped up into, you know, distinct project segments from, you know, labeled A through M. I mean, it's 25 miles, so that's quite a few segments going on. That line above it kind of gives you a feel for what's going on with the 2020 to 23 TIP funding. That's that $10 million. And you can see those blue lines show where we're accelerating, or we're pushing things and evolving things to 15% design. The green areas show current studies going on in isolated areas along Colorado 7. And then the line above it, that's the 22 to 25 TIP, which was another 9.77 million. And here's where we hope to evolve beyond, and, you know, moving forward in a couple of these isolated areas and intersections, we hope to get to 30% design, and a couple of the other ones we're hoping for 90% design. And I love, Carson, is that you with the little mouse? That is perfect. I love what you're doing. Thank you so much. Yes. And then the Dr. Cog 24 to 27 TIP line, that's the starter transit, the starter transit startup. Gotta use that word twice. That Sarah was talking about a couple slides ago. Or maybe it was just the last slide. All right. So that kind of shows you how things are evolving, where the funding's going geospatially speaking, and how everything is kind of progressing along Colorado 7. The next slide shows kind of the strategic efforts that are going on Colorado 7 right now. And I think that's kind of one of the awesome advantages of having a coalition and a technical advisory committee, is that we can come up with these plans and these visions that span like the entire 25-mile stretch of Colorado 7, multi-jurisdictionally speaking. You know, things that, like, you know, each project would have to have its own communication plan. Well, why do that when we can just do a communication plan for the, you know, entire 25-mile stretch of Colorado 7, as well as a bike corridor plan, a technology deployment plan, you know, a systems planning tool, as well as environmental resource planning. And the next slide will go a little bit deeper into these, but I'd also show that this slide also kind of identifies what we expect to accomplish with the $10 million from 2023, and where we're augmenting with the TIP dollars from 2022 to 2025, going out into that Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4 of 2024. So those are the overall arching, kind of creating the I guess the conceptual superstructure of Colorado 7. And the next slide goes into the communications management. And I don't know, Tammy, do you want to talk about the communication activities?
Sure. So we have our communications team is made up of Mueller, who's the communications manager, and a couple of their consultants, and then the TMAs are also on the communications team from all three regions. So me for Smart Commute, Community Solutions, and Boulder Transportations, because we're so ingrained in the community, we thought it was really crucial. The team thought it was crucial, and so did we, for us to be in the communications. We've been extremely busy over the last 90 days, getting everything set up, as you can see here. Our first goal was to make a communications management plan, which really lays out the communications and the different pieces of it and parts, and who's doing what, how it's doing, the involvement with the different PIOs for the different regions, and everything from start to finish. So that's kind of our, I guess, communications Bible, which is a living document, and we update that as needed as new stuff comes online or as new projects start, people change, all that. It's a really great document. For our public outreach, you can see the little picture there. We have been doing a lot of work on the CDOT website, and the link is there. I encourage everybody to go check it out. We are in the process of getting a separate subpage set up under this main one for every single segment, and also the bike treatment guide, the systems planning study, all those other subgroups. So we'll have all of our information on there. It's going to be a one-stop shop for you to find all the information. There's also a form in there for people that have questions that can fill out, that will go to this next item as our email. And we have, the whole team has access to this email, and we have separate subfolders set up that will, our group sorts and puts them in, like, so if we get an email for the bike treatment guide, it goes to the folder for that group. Segment H will go to the folder for that group, so that the people, the teams that are working on those specific segments can go in there and specifically reply to these emails, because they've got the head knowledge for that more than the communications team does. And then we also have a hotline number, which is standard with any CDOT project, that for people that either don't have access to the email or the website or whatever can call in. And we monitor that and check that several times every day through the communications team. couple of our first key pieces were to make sure that we branded the project. With a project this long, this big, this extensive, and spanned out over so many years, we really want to have it branded so that as we move through the years and people get information on this, they still know that it's associated with this project and not a new one. That's the last thing you want, is people thinking that they're doing 20 different projects and how is that going to affect me on 4 of them. This one is consistent to the whole quarter. We've got templates set up. We're developing fact sheets. You saw part of the one from the coalition. We're putting that into our branding. And as we develop these are also going on the website, so you can look at those there. And we also have developed communications packets for the PIOs for the different jurisdictions, so that they can take something that they need and automatically put it into these templates. So if they need to do a presentation, they can take that presentation template, which is the one you're seeing today, and put it in that template. We've also developed headers specific to each one, so that when these individual projects are online, which you can see below, example in segment F, and the bikeway treatment guide, you can see that they are consistent through the whole thing, and hopefully they can see that it all ties it together and you know that you're still dealing with the same overall project. As far as our monthly meetings go, our comms team meets every week, or the first Tuesday of every month, to discuss what's going on, and we have an hour and we're running out of time, so we're probably making those longer. We also have monthly meetings with the different segment teams, and we have a monthly PIO meeting with the PIO representatives for the different jurisdictions, just to have them bring any concerns they have to us. And it's a good way for us to develop a good rapport with them and work together as one team. For ongoing and upcoming work, we are getting ready. We've been working with CDOT on a press release, and so CDOT is finalizing that, and we should be hopefully seeing that in the next few weeks. That'll come out. Once we get that and CDOT puts it out, we can also push that out to the PIOs, and they can send that out through their channels as well. Like I said, we're working really hard on all the website updates. That's been a big thing, and Mueller is working really hard on 508 document compliance, so that is for the visual impaired, so that all our documents can be scanned through that system, and they can read those documents. And then we have a very robust corridor stakeholder database, which is something that is constantly updated. We have a mile ride radius on CO7 from Brighton to Boulder. So the entire mile, it's a 1 mile radius of all key stakeholders. And as new employers come online, new residents come online, those get added as well. So we want to make sure everybody's included and they have the latest and greatest information. And that's pretty much it. We're still going gung-ho on a lot of this other stuff. Thanks. Back to you, Stephen.
I like that. I feel like a news anchor. Back to you. Yeah, the bikeway tree. I think Tammy mentioned. I think you used the phrase like consistency across a quarter, and that's what these plans, like the bikeway treatment guide and the technology deployment planner, are intended to do. The bike treatment plan. It's a guide that creates a unified vision across the entire corridor. It helps because these are individual projects along a 25-mile stretch of highway, kind of planned independently of each other. Who knows? Someone puts a detached bike path on the east side of the highway, then the next segment's on the west side, and now the bicyclist's like, how do I get across? What's going on? So this is really a great way to tie everything together and make sure all the interconnectivity is there through the entire stretch of the 25-mile corridor, pulled together, and obviously with the TAC, locals, the bike groups, etc. The technology deployment plan is similar, only in terms of it being a unified vision across the entire 25-mile stretch of the corridor, looking at trying to figure out how to improve transit reliability across that 25 miles, pedestrian, bicyclist safety, traffic safety, intermodal connectivity, and as well as some data-driven coordination that will be multi-jurisdictional, across all partners and stakeholders. The next slide kind of goes into some of the traffic modeling and stuff. Once again, why have each project do their own traffic modeling when we can have one giant traffic model, if you will, for the entire corridor? This tool also has some pretty cool options in here. I think if I understand it right, like I'm not the technical guy here, so someone else can chime in if I'm saying it wrong, but you can do things like toggle on and off BRT in the traffic models to see how that's going to affect everything. Or you can toggle on, like, what if we do section L before we do section K, you know, or what if we do K before L? How does it all kind of interact and interface? So it's a pretty powerful tool that can be used, you know, as the corridor evolves. So then the next slide, I think we go from kind of these corridor-wide tools to individual projects that are going on. These are the projects, they're funding, whether it's coming from the 2023 tip or whether it's coming from the 22-25 tip. And these are, like I said, individual projects, where they're at in their development and their planning, whether, like, let's take that first line as an example. The segment A PE level says preliminary engineering level 1. We're hoping by the end of the year, and this would actually be a Region 4 project, I think. So, and so maybe Dan, if I say anything wrong, jump in. That is expected to go on throughout 2024, but right there in the middle of 2023, the color of money is going to switch from that 2023 tip money to the 22-25 tip money. So this kind of shows where the current individual projects are in their evolutionary process and what money we're associating with them and what we hope to accomplish, and their schedules going through 2023 and 2024. Then the next slide kind of gets into, once again, the breakdown between 2023 and the 22-25 tip funding. That top row that's in gray shows, you know, what's being committed and what we're working on across the corridor and what consultants are on board, and, you know, which ones are Region 1, et cetera. And then that bottom line shows which ones we're programming right now with that additional $9.77 million and where we hope to be here in the future pretty quick. And those are all, this kind of gives you a feel for all that tip money, and it's great. It's really making a huge impact on the corridor. We're able to evolve and move forward. But there's projects on our Colorado 7 that aren't funded. There's actual other projects, be it funded by CDOT resurfacing or maybe faster safety money. And the next couple of slides will go into that. I think the next one is the Region 4 projects. And Dan, if you're online, if you want to talk about your wonderful Region 4 projects.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Marcucci, resident engineer in the CDOT Boulder office. So the first project here is 30th Street on Highway 7 in the city of Boulder. This will be a local agency project run by the city of Boulder. It's still in its very initial phases. I'm working now to set up an IGA to transfer Senate Bill 260 funding from CDOT to Boulder to do that design. We're looking at 30% plans is what the goal is for that project. Just basically now to set Boulder up for some advanced right-of-way acquisition. So that is a good one that has eyes on the future. The next one, Highway 7 at 95th. Also 95th is also Highway 42. So this is intersection of two state highways. This is a Region 4 project run out of my office in Boulder. It is entirely funded by Senate Bill 260 funding for design and construction. So we're working on final design, or working toward, really, we're still at 30% plans right now, but working on design and looking to build it here in 24 sometime. So like I said, FIR probably in May. That slipped a little bit with some personnel changes, and then advertise in September of 24, I guess, trying to build in 25. So that's a real project, real tangible project that is coming. It will look, the scope of that one is to reconstruct that intersection completely. It will add a general purpose lane in each direction. So there'll be 2 GPs in each direction, and also transit lanes in each direction on Highway 7, with building a BRT stations in both directions as laid out in our BRT study. You know, it's fitting into the plan that we've already laid out for the BRT study. So that one is definitely looking to the future, working with our local partners there in Lafayette. The final one, this last section here are 2 local agency projects. 119th Street and Highway 7. This is a City of Lafayette project. They've had to re-advertise this project for construction, but construction is very, very close. I think later, it'll be sometime this year, 2023, when that construction actually starts. And then just a little bit farther to the east is an Erie development project. We call it our Parkdale project, or County Line Road project, where they're relocating County Line Road a little bit to the west and creating a new intersection there. That one is currently under construction. The new signals are up; they're not operational, but that gives a sense of how close that is to being completed with final paving as soon as it starts getting warmer. So those are improvements. That project is making some striping changes to better align with some of the work that's been done, the bike treatment plan, and some of the other work that's been done as part of the $10 million initial project on this corridor. So those are coming up soon here, or they're going to be wrapping up soon, I guess. So that's the Region 4 update, Stephen. Unless there's another slide.
Yeah, I think.
Please
Thanks,
go back to Region
Dan.
1.
Okay, back to it. So also in Region 1, we've got I think we have 4 projects. We got the Colorado 7 at Coal Creek. This is a safety project widening Colorado 7 to accommodate bicycle safety. I think they've had the scoping meeting moving towards FIR, which is 30% design level. Finding this one might need a little bit of additional money, so we're also shaking the CDOT couch cushions to see if we can get the full funding for this. So the other opportunity we have here is maybe there's a culvert right here, a big box culvert, and we might be able to extend the culvert to meet the requirements of the full vision of Colorado 7's, like, width down the line. But we'll see. We're working on that one. It'll be coming soon. The Colorado 7 widening between Sheridan and I-25, that's a Broomfield job. That's one that's intended to kind of an interim bridge project to relieve congestion along that stretch and to kind of accommodate the rapid development in that area, going to that 4-lane widening. There's also a resurfacing component to this project as well. So not only will it be widened, but there's going to be a nice, beautiful driving surface on it with nice, beautiful stripes when everything's done. And we're hoping, I think, planning construction this year on that. The mobility hub, it's something Sarah touched on earlier on in this presentation, and I believe it's a future topic for NATA, maybe even next month. So I won't spoil anything. I'll just give you a little bit of a teaser. There's the interim mobility hub's coming. We're working on it, moving towards FIR, and I'm just repeating a little bit what Sarah said. We also are incorporating into this project, I believe, a stormwater quality management feature in the northeast side. And this is kind of future-proofing this section. It can be used for the interim mobility hub, hopefully the ultimate build out, and any other improvements to Colorado 7 in this general area will be able to use this same water quality feature. So those are a couple of things. We're also kind of eyeballing, that far future, the ultimate mobility hub where, Divergent Diamond or whatever's going to happen over there. We're looking at maybe some early actions, whether it's, getting some right away or moving some utilities to make sure that, we don't run into any roadblocks like down the line when we move towards that ultimate configuration. So that's the interim mobility hub. I think the next slide has the resurfacing project that goes from I-25 all the way to Highway 85. I believe that's 8.7, just shy of 9 miles of resurfacing, creating a really, once again, beautiful driving surface on Colorado 7. When all said and done after this project which is planned for construction in 2024, once it's all said and done, I mean, that whole stretch from on the east side, US 85 to all the way on the west side, Sheridan Boulevard is going to be really, really pretty to drive on. And I don't know if the general public ever uses pretty when they talk about driving on a road, but I do all the time. I'm like, ooh, this is nice. I've ruined many road trips, by the way, by commenting on striping in other states and joint spacing in concrete. So I do kind of geek out on it a little bit. Also part and parcel of this project, there's a couple intersection improvements, lighting improvements that are going along, and those are being funded by, I believe, faster safety money, maybe. So that's what's going on in Region 1 outside of the tip calls and outside of the other stuff we've been talking about in this presentation. And I believe that wraps it all up and leaves any time for questions. Oh, upcoming and current events, segment C study in Lafayette. And there's a public opinion survey coming up, and that's the coalition bus tour. And it sounds like something that Tammy could talk about too, if she wanted to. Back to you, Tammy.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen and Dan. I think that was great. Awesome overview of Highway 7 and all the work that's being done currently and planning and the work that's coming up. I just have one thing. If you guys, for everybody that's on here from CDOT for the CO7, if you guys could put your information in the chat box, name and your role, and that would be great so that we can let everyone else on the call know who you are and what your role is on it. And then I'm gonna let Karen talk about the bus tour when she gets up with the commissioner's update. But right now I would love to open it up to questions to everybody. Ask the questions, guys. These are the cream of the crop of the team here from CDOT. So these are your guys you want to ask the questions to.
Who's got questions? If you can raise your hand. Like often we stump people when we're on Zoom versus in person.
Well, if no one's going to ask the question, Mayor, I guess maybe I will and spur some conversation here. Who's projected to run the bus service, starter service, in a couple of years? And then what does it look like for BRT? Is it RTD or is it someone else?
Oh, I can take this, and Kent, you can add on if I miss anything. So that's a really great question. So we submitted, or not, we as the coalition supported the application, but Boulder County was actually the lead on that application. So they will be responsible for the implementation. And as stakeholders, we worked together and agreed that we would secure the funding and then it would go out to bid. And so that could be, operated by any transit operator in the state of Colorado that bids on that. So at this time, we don't have a determined operator at this time, but we actually have put together a group to start working on that with Boulder County and how we're going to move forward with that RFP.
And Sarah, to add on to the second part of that question regarding BRT, the idea is that we get the starter service going so that we establish ridership, because if we go after Federal Transit Administration, FTA, money for small starts or to start a service, we need to show ridership in their new starts, especially. They require you to show existing plus potential, and then they divide it by 2 and add it to existing. So it's best to have not a big fat zero there. So we're using that as the starter service will help us look at a future BRT along there.
All right, thank you. We have Sean Poe from Commerce City that has a question.
Hi, good morning. I had a quick question on as far as the studies. Maybe this is to Stephen or Kent. As far as the studies for possibly realigning Highway 7 there past 287, or looks like going along Arapahoe Road, there could be maybe a flyover or interchange there, just for better mobility. And farther east, there's a lot of undeveloped property. Didn't know if there was any cut to maybe realign it to get it farther south. I didn't know if that was any kind of consideration in the studies.
Yeah, this is Dan Marcucci. I can take that one. So as far as the PELs in 2013, 14, 15 determined that the Lafayette bypass, as we called it then, was not the best option, right? It goes through, there is a lot of open area, but it's open space for one thing. And there was a pretty even split of traffic coming from Brighton, trying to go north, trying to go through to Boulder, and trying to go south to Broomfield. So the bypass kind of faded away at that point in time, and it moved into improving the local network for the traffic trying to split in 3 different ways, to go down to South Boulder Road, to use Baseline, and to use Arapahoe. So the PELs, and then our current work is working to improve that local network. That's what SIUC or segment C is really improving, that local network up toward Arapahoe to get the northbound traffic off of Baseline. Lafayette has a current project now of widening South Boulder Road to try to improve that south leg on South Boulder Road. And then that intersection project I mentioned from Lafayette at 119th is actually out of that same PEL. That's widening that intersection to 4 lanes with transit, a big transit stop there also. So that was the direction that the PEL went, as opposed to a north bypass lane around Lafayette.
That's a good question. I thought it was going to be rerouted too. Anytime I drive to Boulder, I take that. I go that way and go up 119 and Arapahoe and go west from there. Lynn Baca, Commissioner Baca.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the presenters this morning on State Highway 7. So a comment first, and then I do have a question. The county just got back from the National Association of Counties where we met with US DOT. So we are talking about all of your communities along Highway 7 to our congressional delegation and US DOT. Also our state our state delegation. So we did a state legislative dinner before the session started. And I always talk about 270 and I-25 as our interstate priorities for Adams County. Our bus rapid transit priorities for Adams County is State Highway 7 and also Federal Boulevard. So it's really important that we have these partnerships and coalitions. So your communities, RTD, CDOT, all of you are being talked about at the federal and the state level as being great partners for Colorado 7 corridor and also the mobility hub at I-25 and Highway 7. So my question is there an opportunity, and this is something we probably can't answer today, but we can maybe entertain at a future meeting, an opportunity that we can all make this a legislative priority, and then can we go in on any funding grants? So particularly the IIJA federal funding. So I know we're doing this by segment, by community, but I think, you know, if we can do East Coalition, West Coalition, or somewhere in between, I think that would be a great partnership, and that would look very strong for our region that if we all come together to our federal delegation. We also met with Representative Carabeo and Buck recently, and we mentioned this corridor as one of our priorities.
Great. Well, thank you for representing us there. And, you know, I'll be going out to National League of Cities next month and hopefully meeting with some of those same folks and advocating for the same. Trustee Bear.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for pivoting to meet the weather. Appreciate that. Thank you for this presentation. We just had a meeting last night, Yuri and the City and County of Broomfield, to kind of go over some of the same information, and there's just so much happening on the Colorado 7 corridor that it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around all of it. I really appreciate all the work. My question is about the mobility hub. Does that include the interim mobility hub? Does that include improvements along Colorado 7 to make that accessible to pedestrians and cyclists all along the corridor? Or in the slides I've seen, it seems like the improvements kind of stop on either side of the highway. And I'm just wondering, you know, does it include, you know, the necessary sidewalks and other things, bike lanes? Thanks.
I'll take a shot at it and feel free to jump in, see that. So the interim mobility hub improvements are focused on just the station improvements. So the park and ride facility, the stations, the slip ramps, the pedestrian bridge connecting the 2 slip ramps together. I can speak for Broomfield that our development community is on the hook for making those improvements along Colorado 7. But those are coming in piece by piece as each development is coming in along Colorado 7. So we still have a missing part on both the northwest and on the southwest portion in Broomfield. We don't anticipate any improvements in the northeast area for some time. And then Thornton is in the Lark Ridge corner of the development, and that is the one that will be connected. We do anticipate that initially that there will probably be, because the development is still, at least in Broomfield, to the west of the interchange. There's no development directly adjacent to the interchange at the moment, that most of the people accessing the park and ride will be driving. And we're really excited that RTD has proposed a North Broomfield Flex Ride. And so we anticipate once that's open that those in the Broomfield area will have access via the Flex Ride service to make that transit connection if they don't have a driving option to get to the facility.
And on the southeast corner, it's proposed right now that intermobility hub tie into the existing trail network or side path network that we have that handles pedestrians and bicycles already along Lark Ridge. So it will tie into that, as well as the proposed park and ride and on that plan.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comment?
I don't want to hop in if anybody else does, Mayor Mills. I just want to address Commissioner Baca's question about funding and give someone from CDOT an opportunity to maybe talk about any thoughts around IIJA funding, if there is anything there. Yeah, just didn't want to go past it.
Anybody from CDOT have anything they can comment on that? Commissioner Baca's question?
This might be out of my wheelhouse, so I can look into it and get back, but maybe someone else has something.
I see Commissioner Stewart with her hand up.
Commissioner Stewart.
Stephen, you might have more than I do on this, but I have to say that we have a group at CDOT that look at opportunities for any of this kind of funding throughout the whole state of Colorado, and Highway 7 and I-25 are on the radar for any kind of federal funding that would come through, that the criteria works for that. And as you know, whenever we pursue any kind of federal funding, we look for both partnerships and local match, but we also look for projects that have a good opportunity to meet the criteria to make them competitive. We don't want to go through the effort of putting together these applications and not having them be successful. So they are on the radar, and I've heard from Herman Stockinger, who said to me, yes, I am looking at Highway 7, and yes, I'm looking at I-25. So I think the best thing that can happen on Highway 7 is for this coalition, NATA, and the Colorado 7 coalition to send a letter to CDOT, to Shoshana Liu, our executive director, and copy the Transportation Commission, and encourage us and the executive management team to consider any opportunities for joint applications for IIJA grants or any other of the funding opportunities that are coming through. We've been promised that there's quite a few coming through for Colorado. So I would say that's what you need to do.
Thank you, Carson. Thank you, Karen.
Ken Mormon.
Yes, I might add on to that. The whole purpose of the Colorado 7 Coalition is to get our project, these studies that we're doing is to get our projects lined up so that they are successful on as we go forward with grants. And also as developers come in, to be able to show them, this is what we want you to build or pay for. So it's going to be a combination of both IIJA and state and local funds, and also developer private funds involved in that. So we are, the preliminary engineering environmental keeps advancing some of the plans, and as we advance there, it makes it easier. We have a lot of boxes checked when we do go after federal funding that way.
Yeah, and really quickly, I'll just add is that we're setting up these projects. We're in the pre-construction phase. And once we get them to that 90% construction ready, I think we can feel more confident about going after federal funding to construct those improvements because we've mitigated all those risks through the preliminary engineering and pre-construction activities. So we know exactly what we're going to build, and how much it's going to cost. So we're getting ready. We're really excited about getting to the construction phase of many of these project elements, and appreciate the cooperation of everybody in CDOT and helping us get to that stage and look for opportunities to get these built.
Stephen Henry.
Yeah, I just didn't want anybody to miss Jan Rowe from CDOT put in a couple webinars coming up, I believe this week, about CDS funding. So there's something in the chat that's probably useful. Thanks.
Mayor Guyleen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As some of you may know, because you were there, we also went to DC almost 2 weeks ago now with the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition to advocate for public transportation and infrastructure funding. Mayor McNally was there along with our staff, as well as all of the Boulder County mayors. And there are about 10 different municipalities represented. So when we showed up to meet with our senators and Congress folks, they listened. I mean, that strength in numbers and speaking with a unified voice, it was really powerful because I'd not been able to do the annual fly-in with the other mayors. We haven't done it for 2 years because of COVID. And I see the impact of us being prepared and speaking with one voice and having a unified message to promote the priorities of 119 in Colorado 7. So I think we really made an impression, and I think we need to keep pushing that to get some of those funds to improve these major arterials. I just wanted to put that out there. It was a great trip.
Thank you for going to bat for us, and we appreciate that. Any other comment or questions? All right, well, I'll just comment real quick. You know, Colorado 7 is a corridor that's been close to my heart for years. I've grown up around it and just want to see the improvements of it. Tammy. You're still muted.
I do that every day. I just wanted to thank Stephen and Dan, Jerry Mugg, and McKinnon for coming today, taking time out of their schedules. I know they're really busy. So I just really appreciate you guys coming in and giving this presentation to NATA. It's been almost a year since we had you guys out here. So a lot's changed in a year and a lot's going to change in another year. So thank you guys so much for this presentation. And I want to let everybody else know that we do have a PDF of the CDOT presentation. If you want it, just let us know.
Thank you. And while we see improvements to the west of I-25, I look forward to seeing improvements east of I-25. There is a lot of population growth even today continuing over, not only into Brighton, but in the areas in between that are in Thornton and unincorporated Adams County. Thank you. If we're done with this part, the next item on the agenda is the CDOT Commissioner's Update. Karen Stewart.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for having me again today. I'll start with CDOT's proposed bus tour for April 28th. This is for Colorado 7. It came out of the last meeting that we had at the Colorado 7 Coalition meeting. You remember we did a bus tour on I-25 to look at the challenges and also the improvements along I-25. And some of the people on the Colorado 7 Coalition went on that I-25 trip and thought 1 on 7 would be really helpful. And so that's underway. We're working with the executive management team at CDOT and also Region 1 and Region 4 RTDs to put this tour together. And so I think you saw on the slide, save the date for April 28th. And I hope we have good participation on this. We had great participation on the I-25. And I think because this corridor is diverse, and Mayor Mills, you talked about this, there's been quite a lot of improvement on the west side. The east side needs some love and attention. And so I think it'll be really helpful for everybody on this coalition group to take that trip. We're hoping to keep it under 4 hours so that it doesn't eat up everyone's morning. So stay tuned for that. Like to say that there's been lots of changes at CDOT. in this last year, and another change happened this month when the director of the Department of Transit and Rail, Amber Blake, gave her resignation, and that position has not been filled yet. Amber's been the one in charge of Bustang and Outrider, the mobility hubs, all the things that are under the umbrella of the Department of Transit and Rail. And so it'll be important that we get somebody in there to replace her. Meanwhile, Jennifer Phillips, who has been just recently hired by CDOT to be the Assistant Director of Bus Operations, is gung-ho about working with us. Malcolm Fleming and Carson and I had a Zoom meeting with her just recently to invite her to NATA to talk about the mobility hub, which will give us more information about the 10-mile mobility hub master plan that the Department of Transit and Rail has, and how that affects some of the smaller hubs and how that affects a large hub like ours. I think ours might be the largest hub that's anticipated along I-25. So I think Carson is arranging to have her come maybe in April. That will be exciting to do that. And we're really pleased to have her. Next, I think you can throw that safety slide on, Carson. At the last Transportation Commission meeting, our new chief engineer, Keith Stefanik, provided this slide for us, and you can take it off of here, or I think Carson, you can have it available for anybody who wants it. It's interesting, you've probably seen all the news recently about we're headed in the wrong direction with fatalities, both also crashes, non-fatal crashes. And you've recently seen in the news the number of closures on I-70 West, particularly at Glenwood Canyon, with trucks and vehicles. And we know that it's a problem, and we're working hard within CDOT to come up with some mitigation for some of these challenges. And anybody who's driven this corridor knows how complex it is, the people speed. We've had extraordinarily bad weather. It's an issue for us. So this is some information about fatalities. You can see that they're going up. Let's go down to the next piece on this. Serious injuries. You know, if you look at 20 and 21, COVID travel trends dropped those fatalities, but you can see that they're rising again. This year has been extraordinary already in the number of fatalities and serious injuries we've had. The next one, please, is the emphasis of what we're looking to do: safe roads, safe people, safe driving, and post-crash care. We think it's a combination of making sure our roads are safe, making sure people, you know, understand how to use the roads. Sometimes bicyclists and pedestrians, cyclists are the ones who are involved in some of these crashes, serious injuries. And we're not going to villainize the pedestrians and bicyclists and motorcyclists, but we're going to say that everybody using the roads have to be aware that these are roads that are available for everybody, and to be mindful of the way they drive on these roads. And then the safe driving strategies, you know, we don't have enough enforcement, and we work with CSP and local jurisdictions on I-70 in particular, to address the distracted driving and the aggressive driving, the speeding that happens. And sometimes these weather-related issues come on so fast that drivers who aren't used to driving in Colorado are taken by surprise. So that's another thing. And then, of course, the post-crash care, looking at analyzing how these crashes happened and addressing strategies to increase survivability. I thought it was a good presentation. The next set of slides, Carson, are just trends. that will show you some of the trends of from 2018 to 2021. We don't have the 2022 figures in totally. Looks like it says on here we do. And then of course 2023. So interesting information if any of you are interested in it. And I think Carson probably give you a link to all of that. Finally, I want to talk about the segment 2 options. Oh, there you go. So our working group on segment 2, you remember we had an EIS, maybe 2014, 15, something like that. Then we had an EA that came out in 2019 that never was published and or accepted. And then we went back to the drawing board on segment 2. Segment 2 is our notorious challenging segment that contains a managed lane through segment 2, has 270 northbound and southbound intersecting with those managed lanes and coming into the traffic flow heading north and south on I-25 at that area. And it has long been a villain for all of us. I can't remember how long it's been that I've been working on this, but many people on this call have been working on it just as long as I have. To try and fix some of the safety issues that happen on I-25 at segment 2. We have had several levels of analysis, and this is the next level of analysis, a meeting that we had last week or the week before that came up with 3 options. You can see that the 3 options that we're working on now are, interestingly enough, contain center loading platform, which was in the original EIS and the original EA. A little bit different configuration than the original, but those 3 options have been identified by the stakeholders being CDOT staff, RTD staff, and local jurisdictions in North Glen and Thornton, as well as several others, looking at a variety of options that have been presented by a new scoping. So it's interesting that these options are there. We're going to have another meeting, I believe, at the end of March as we move forward. So this is, you can see, an elevated center loading platform for the bus. And then I think the third one, there you go, is almost the original alternative for an at-grade center bus station. Now, I have to say that the cost for something that's this complex is not covered under our 10-year plan. The funding isn't identified under the 10-year plan. And there will be some concern from CTIO on how any of these center loading platforms affect the efficiency of the managed lanes here. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens with this. Herman Stockinger at CDOT's executive management team has been involved in this and is engaged in how we can find funding and move this challenge along. He's committed to helping with this, and of course I am, as well as your Region 1 CDOT staff. We've all put our thinking caps on to come up with some solution to this crash-prone corridor that we have unfondly nicknamed the crash corridor of Colorado. With that being said, I'd like to also say that CTIO, originally HPTE, is going after a TIFIA loan for segment 5 of the I-25 managed lanes. And I'd like to have Nick Farber come to NATA, I'm thinking maybe in May, to talk about the TIFIA loan. Some of the components of the TIFIA loan will be interesting in that the amount of money that's brought in from the managed lanes for segment 2 and 3 affect the ability for us to get a TIFIA loan for segment 5, and then coming up in the near future, segment 6, 7, and 8, which are the ones that are north of our catchment area, closer to the Longmont and North catchment area, will be online to bring in toll revenue as well. So there are opportunities in the future to have some toll revenue that may help us once we identify what segment 2's safety construction design needs to be in the future, to maybe have some of that toll revenue eventually help us with building whatever we have to build in order to complete this project. I am thinking maybe 2026, 2027. It's frustrating to me that it takes so very long. I know Nancy McNally, Mayor McNally's on this, and she and I worked on this years and years ago. We're both back, we're both pushing. And it's frustrating that it takes so long to get these things done. But I do want to say that there's quite a bit of movement going forward now on segment 2, and appreciate the help that we've gotten from Thornton and from North Glen and from RTD, and of course our stellar professionals at CDOT. I'm happy to take any questions. That's my report for today.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. Any questions for Karen at this time? Well, we appreciate the time you take to spend with us and bring us these updates. The crash corridor that's been named, we definitely want to get those improvements going, and so we appreciate the efforts there.
Okay, thanks very much for having me.
The next item is the RTD director's reports. So we start with Director Busick, if you're on.
I am on, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Couple big things on RTD's agenda for this year. First is the fare study and equity analysis, which is moving forward at great speed, and hopefully we'll have some final decisions the end of this year. There was a presentation at our recent committee meeting at RTD. Many of you may have seen a similar presentation, but the goal obviously is to reduce fares and simplify the fare structure so that fares are not a barrier to entry into the system, and the complexity either is no longer a barrier to entry. So we're making some great strides there and looking forward to implementing a fare structure that really helps us out in terms of attracting ridership and just making it easier for people to get into the system. The second big ticket item is the Northwest rail study that was commissioned, I don't know, I think it was 2021, if I'm not mistaken, everyone made the approval for moving this forward. Maybe it was 2022. It's been a while. Anyway, we approved $8 million to conduct this peak service plan feasibility study for the Northwest Rail, otherwise known as the B line, which currently and it goes from Denver Union Station to the Westminster Station at 72nd Avenue, and is supposed to go all the way to Longmont. So there have been a couple of presentations. The most recent one that I attended was February 2nd in Westminster. I know our Mayor McNally was there, a number of council members and other dignitaries were there as well. Had a pretty good turnout, and that was after an earlier one that was held in Boulder, another good turnout as well, good input from stakeholders in the community on that. So that's a big one that we're going to take a look at. And as was mentioned earlier by Kent Moorman, ridership is a big deal when it comes to federal funding. So a really important part of the study that I'm looking forward to seeing is what are the new ridership projections for this line, because that can drive a lot of decision making for us. So really eager to get that going. And just for those of you who may not understand what the peak service plan is, it's 3 trains in the morning heading from Longmont into Denver Union Station, and 3 trains in the late afternoon, evening heading from Union Station toward Longmont, 6 trips per day. Full build out of the Northwest Rail was anticipated to be 55 trains per day. It's a big number and a big difference. But the thought is doing the rush hours on either end, you're attracting hopefully the bulk of your transit ridership throughout the day. So we'll see how that goes. More will be coming. That's about all I have. Director Whitmore, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of minor items. Did want to mention that I feel like we've at RTD have moved to a little bit of a better position in being members of coalitions and so on and so forth, which is extremely important. I do know that Director Geisinger and staff members, including Michael, who is on this Zoom meeting, were with the Northwest mayors a couple of weeks ago in DC, and it's great to work as a team on funding and priority issues. As a follow-up to that, several of us will be going to the APTA Legislative Conference, and certainly we will in DC mid-March, and certainly we'll be meeting with our delegation as well. So hopefully we can continue to send the coalition message on funding for items like the Highway 7 improvements. So looking forward to that. One other item that may be a little under the radar, but of major importance as we kind of frame our future with security and customer service. The Operations and Safety Committee had a lengthy meeting last week going over revisions to our code of conduct that we put together. Gosh, Vince, I don't know, might have been our second or third year on the board. A major undertaking on how we deal with those that are homeless and those that are having mental issues in and around and on our facilities, and all the complex issues and dealing with that with our security force and our police force. So we spent a lot of time on the tweaking of that, and we did move it to the full board for consideration at next week's meeting after a great deal of discussion and a very close vote on postponing for another several months to do more input. This is a tool that Chief Fitzgerald and the other folks that work in the public, especially around Union Station and Civic Center, but also at our local areas, need to have a central understanding of what our role is. Some of us fall on the side, hey, we're a transportation agency, we're not a social work agency. But on the other hand, when you look at a morning like today, when it's 5 below on my thermometer and people are needing shelter, you have to have some flexibility to assist. So we'll be plowing through that at the board meeting next week. So I appreciate Vince's input on the fare study. A lot of questions on that, including yesterday at Smart Commute on the timing of that. It can't happen soon enough, but we're being very careful and diligent in looking at all the factors with that bit of revenue loss, and then also looking at hopefully someday even minimizing the fares more or seeing them go away, but that kind of remains to be seen. We are watching a couple of pieces of legislation at the Capitol, and Michael could certainly talk to those issues if there is any interest, but they're not major as far as concern, more on the kind of the positive vein about a little tweakage of our zero fare month that we get to have again this summer to help with some ozone mitigation. Great program last summer, and thrilled that we get to do it again. So with that, that's all I have, unless Michael has any corrections to what I've said, or Vince. We'd be open for questions as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Michael Davies, did you have anything to add to the director's report?
Not much, just to touch on the bill that Director Whitmore mentioned. It's House Bill 1101, and something the Board of Directors has taken a support position on. overall, it doesn't require any new funding. It's just making some tweaks to make sure we can try to utilize and create flexibility with any unspent funding from the 2022 grant cycle and make that available in 2023, which we think is a good thing for RTD. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's specifically to the zero fare month or period, not to the overall operation.
Good. I don't see directors Harwick and Davidson here. So are there any questions for our RTD delegation here in the group? Mayor Guyleen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we were really excited to hear the positive news about the expansion of flex ride service in Northern Broomfield, and would like to know more about like the timeline of what that looks like.
I was wondering if that would come up. I'm not specifically clear on the timeline. I know we're moving through the process, and Director Davidson's been very active in that. So I don't have that off the top of my head. I don't know if Michael or Vince does as well, but we are watching from the neighboring districts with a lot of attention, and are pleased, as you are, Mayor, of that looking like it may come to fruition and serving as a model for hopefully a couple of other spots along several important corridors.
The mayor, following on that, I can say it's for our May service change. I don't have the exact date in May when that is planned, but per FTA regulations, we have to go through a public process, and that's why this information is out there now. We're doing our public hearing on the recommended changes for the May service change, so that's what it's filed under.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. I think you guys do a service update or change about 2 or 3 times a year. And so that's your next cycle coming up. Great.
3 per year.
All right. Well, that's exciting for our neighbors in Broomfield. Hopefully we can get some more service improvements in throughout the northern system. So thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you, directors, for participating as usual, and please invite your other colleagues that are on the list to come as they can.
Mayor, we just had a chat from Natalie. I didn't know she was on the Zoom, so she's on our staff and a planner. So please take a look at that. She's really in the know on that. So if you have questions, she's a good source there. So glad she was on the Zoom. Thanks.
Looks like it says the May service changes on May 28th. So great. So we don't have anything else on the agenda. Just anything else anybody wants to bring up for the group? Carson, do you have anything to add?
I was going to pause if there was any other thoughts there, but I will say our next meeting is next month, I believe on the 23rd. Again, we'll be back in person pending any terrible weather events like today. And we'll be looking to have probably RTD come and talk about the kind of north area ridership as a whole. I'll be working with RTD staff and the directors here to kind of put together a presentation there, assuming it's possible. And then we'll be looking to April for a mobility hub plan presentation from Jennifer Phillips at CDOT, and then follow that up the very next day with a CO7 bus tour. So we'll be all in, and then it sounds like May might be a good time to have CTIO's Nick Farber come and talk about the Tiffy alone on I-25. So always send me ideas or things you'd like NATA to cover, and that's really all I have, Mayor.
Well, thank you. And yeah, like Carson says, we're always looking for new things to share with the group. It looks like Sarah Grant put up a link to the service changes for RTD, so we appreciate you doing that. You know, March is the snowiest time in our area, so we'll see if we're meeting in person or not. I prefer to meet in person, but we appreciate everyone's flexibility as the many different agencies had a little delay, so it would have been hard to get into the Human Services building today. So we appreciate everyone's flexibility coming in online. If there's nothing else, we will adjourn at 8:49. Appreciate everybody coming on. Have a great day and be safe and stay warm.